All right, what's going on, folks? MC is in the house. Welcome to another Warrior stream. My name is Justin Garcia, also known as Master Chim, and I'm here every Wednesday at noon Eastern Standard Time for the Warrior Stream live show. What I do is I talk about a specific topic. I usually share this topic not only on the title card that I prompt earlier this morning, but I also send out an email about this. Let me say what's up to everybody here. Felix Mendez, my man, what's going on? Good to see you, my friend. Corey, what's up? Jamie up in Canada, what's going on? Caceres, good to see you, brother. Joe Rotundo, good afternoon. Good afternoon to you, my friend. And Aaron, also up in Canada, my man Jamie, good to see you, darling. Saw an adorable picture of your daughter the other day. She is getting cuter by the day. I'm glad you guys are well. All right, so Cherrytown Vibe, what's going on, brother man? Good to see you. What the hell was I talking about before? MasterChim.com. Not only, I got a thing here I got to share. If you guys didn't notice, I'm playing with buttons today. Oh, snap. I keep forgetting that this thing has all this utility. And I'm a one-man show, so you guys got to bear with me. MasterChim.com is my website. If you are not on the Master Chim letter, which is my free email newsletter, send it out every single morning, you should do so. Go to MasterChim.com, put your email in. Just for doing that, I will give you a free, that's right, I will pay you to get my free emails with a program, a $47 program. It's usually $47, but you can get it free. Called Master the 24-Hour Cycle, which is my balance management program, combination of time management with the added criteria of maintaining balance in our lives, right? It's no sense in organizing the sort of downfall and destruction of your life as you know it. Just because it's all in the calendar and you're all following a schedule doesn't mean you're doing the right thing. And I sort of endeavored to improve upon that approach in Master the 24-Hour Cycle, which, again, you can get for free just by going to masterchim.com. All right. Derek, what's going on, brother man? All right, so today's talk, Me the People. I hope you guys enjoyed the thumbnail. I keep telling myself I am not going to make a thing about this every week because it really isn't relevant to the content or topic at hand, but I really have fun making those thumbnails more than I should. And usually, as a result, takes me probably longer than it should time-wise. But I enjoyed what Midjourney spit out this morning when I was, barraging it with different prompts, settling eventually on the one that I used, which I thought was pretty apropos of what I wanted to discuss. Stellan, what's going on, my friend? Good to see you. All right, so Me the People, right? So if you guys don't know, obviously the U.S. Constitution, the identity of an American, the American way, the reason why Americans tend to be different than a lot of other people, the idea of we the people, it is a sentiment that is supposed to be embedded in our American approach towards making this thing work, this experiment called America. Obviously, Me the People, because that is what I feel it is transitioned to. And not through any process that was, sort of hidden from us. This isn't something that just was thrust upon us overnight one day. It was the slow erosion of, I would say, what I've said in my book, a transcendent value into one that's very much within arm's reach of our grimy, selfish paws. So what the hell am I talking about? Let's start off with the first talking point that I shared in this morning's email. Why your values matter more than your view. Why your values matter more than your view. Okay, so I don't know, and I'm going to use this as an example. It's fresh in my mind. I don't know if you guys have ever watched those First Amendment audit videos, all right? Those First Amendment audit videos. It's those videos where you have a guy, and it's even telling that I'm trying not to insult the guy because the guy, it does seem it's like, yeah, got nothing fucking better to do. But I paradoxically, maybe contradictorily, whatever that word is, I think this guy serves this individual, these types of individuals that do these videos serve a great value and service to all Americans. But I can't help on surface level just be like questioning of why they're even doing this. Like you ain't got a job. You ain't got, like, is this for YouTube? Is this for the gram? Like what's the point of this? But again, this is to the first talking point of the email. Why your values matter more than your view. I am a firm believer and supporter and advocate of the United States Constitution as being the sort of regulatory guideline, the transcendent value, as you will, of how we're supposed to get along and coexist. I've often said, you've heard me say it on this channel before, the Constitution is the compromise. All right, the U.S. Constitution is the thing that sort of gives us the rules of the game we're playing as Americans. Embedded in the Constitution is the phrase, we the people. Hence the contrast to changing that to a me. It's like when we start thinking me, the compromise that we've all collectively made starts to erode, and we're seeing that in real time. Yarn Saxa, good to see you, dog. So in these audit videos, you have usually a guy who, I mean, maybe there are girls that do it. I haven't seen any girls doing it. But what they'll do is they'll have like their phone out. They'll have usually like a GoPro or something, and they're doing something that's basically just an anomalous activity. Now it could be walking into a municipal building. It could be if they're doing a Second Amendment audit, right? This is the terminology they use. It could be they're walking down the road, open carrying an AR or open carrying a pistol or whatever. They're basically doing something, like the game we used to play when we were kids, where we'd be fucking with somebody and they'd say, stop touching me, and you'd get your finger like really next to them and go, I'm not touching you, and technically you're right, but the sentiment and spirit of what it is they're trying to convey is lost in their ability to articulate it. Well, this is the situation or the predicament that a lot of cops find themselves in with these auditors, these First Amendment auditors, Second Amendment auditors, because what these people are doing are basically doing everything within the law that is so anomalous and irregular to what else is going on, that there is a sort of an assumption, a presumption made by not only the citizens that usually contact law enforcement or law enforcement once they arrive, that these people are doing something wrong. And it's one of those things where it's like you watch these videos, and the tendency, and my intent here is to really get you guys to be on the side of the auditors at the end of this, as annoying as they are, right, or as they appear to be, and as much as there's a tendency to like just question like why he's even doing this. Like some of these cops get sort of raked over the coals in interacting with these auditors, but as well they should, right? So what they'll do is, I'm gonna just think of one. A guy was across the street from a courthouse, and he was videotaping, and he was doing it in a way that, it looked like, what the fuck is this guy doing? And he's doing that on purpose because it's irregular. But again, not illegal. So he's there doing his thing, and somebody calls the police. Cop shows up, and female cop, and hey, how you doing? And he's like, how you doing? He's super cordial, polite. That's one of the things you'll find that the majority of them do. They don't exacerbate the situation by making it personal or anything with intent. A lot of the cops do wind up taking it personally, but through no actions done by the auditor. And in this particular video, the lady says, what are you doing? Oh, I'm just filming some video. Can I ask what for? Oh, it's got a blog. Now, realistically, he doesn't have to answer her or anything. he could just say, why is it illegal? You know, like, and if it's not, then mind your business. Like, he could be that, but a lot of these guys tend to not be confrontational. So this particular one I'm thinking of, and I actually think the channel that I saw this on was the YouTube channel. I think it was We the People. I'm almost certain that's what it is, We the People. And if it is, go watch the videos and support that channel. I mean, not that the guy needs my support, but you know, a lot of valuable stuff there. And the guy who hosts the channel, whose channel it is a black guy. He says he's a former cop and former sheriff's deputy. So background in law enforcement. He's got that, you know, former, you know, Leo vibe, and great content. Now, here's the thing. Like, I'm friends with a lot of law enforcement. I've trained a lot of law enforcement. You know, I have some experience helping law enforcement. Right? I'll put it that way. I'm not some fucking rat or something, but on the training end of it, you know, and I've been involved in you know, that world for, you know, a lot of my career as a professional martial artist. And I will say that I'm willing to guess that the overwhelming majority of them think these auditors are pieces of shit, and they have a huge critical, you know, stance on what these people are doing. And I think a lot of it, and again, I'm going to continue to make the case today, a lot of it is just insecure, selfish, lazy, you know, being a bitch ass. Like, a lot of these cops need to sort of open their eyes to what it is they're charged with doing as law enforcement officers, and understand, like, you didn't get a job at the fucking barbershop. You know, like, you know, there is no how. You're not allowed to have a bad day. You know, and it's you know, a lot of cops that I know, you know, they may be taken aback by the way that I'm putting that. Well, everybody has bad days. It's like, well, no, you're not allowed to have a bad day, because a bad day for a cop is usually a bad day for somebody else too, right? So you could be going through some stuff, but being a professional, which happened to be the theme of this year's Modern Warrior Conference I taught a couple of weeks ago with my crew of Two on Tom, Two on Harley, and Bill Rapier. Like, the idea of being a professional is like, well, what is your fucking job? Your job is to not get your way. Your job is to not make sure today goes like yesterday did, because yesterday was a good time, or you enjoyed your job yesterday. So I'm going to try and make today as much like that. Like, that is an aside from what your actual obligation and commitment is, what your oath is, right? So getting back to this one video that I watched, you know, she asked for ID, and he goes, well, I'm politely declining to give you a ID. And she goes, well, you know, and then he goes, you know, am I being detained? And a lot of these guys have the same like lingo and language. I don't answer questions. Am I being detained? Like, you see a lot of the same stuff. And she goes, yeah, you are being detained. And he, you know, goes by the script of a lot of these, because remember, they call themselves auditors for a reason. It's like they're going there and they're basically walking the tightrope of what is legal to see if the cops overreact and wind up infringing upon the rights that are protected by the Constitution. So he politely declines to give her ID. You know, am I being detained? Yes, you're being detained. Why am I being detained? While I'm investigating a call that we got that somebody was taking pictures, you know, suspiciously taking pictures from across the building. So he says, well, you know, is it illegal to take pictures, you know, from across the street on a public sidewalk? Well, no. Well, again, what is the crime that you are suspecting me from of having committed, or suspecting that I'm about to? Well, I'm trying to determine that in my investigation. That's why I need your ID. Well, what does my ID have to do with you investigating whether or not the crime? Like, there isn't a crime, but then you find out I'm a specific person. Now what I did is a crime suddenly because of who I am. Like, the logic obviously falls short. But what you wind up getting here, and this is, again, it speaks to why I think these individuals are valuable, as annoying as some of them can be. Like, I can't help but fucking mention that every time. I still appreciate them greatly for what they're doing, because a lot of the cops, you know, they are used to people just following their orders. And I'm willing to say, you know, these people being regular people, there is going to be an offset from some of the laws that they're enforcing and their understanding of these laws in functional practice and application. You know, what are the implications of a law, you know, like, or an amendment like the First Amendment, or the protection that is codified in the First Amendment, like what is the application of that? Well, the Supreme Court has ruled on many different applications when it came into question, but it just stands that at that point in this video, like standing across the street from a building, whether it's a government building or not, from a public street, and taking a video and that's in full public view is completely legal and protected by the First Amendment. So whether or not it's anomalous or irregular or weird, or that would maybe prompt an individual to become suspicious, that's different than the sort of legal threshold that needs to be passed or crossed for an officer to say they have what's called a reasonable, articulable suspicion, which means it's not that you're just acting suspiciously, which is up to the individual. Obviously, that becomes a little arbitrary on an individual level. It's really I could reasonably articulate the crime that I'm suspicious of you of having done or about to perform, about to execute. So there's an accountability there with some of these things that a lot of cops, I'm sure, have out of practice of actually, getting the evidence or getting the proof necessary to sort of cross that legal threshold. So a lot of them just ask for what they want, and they usually get it. Now, all that being said, I've been pulled over fucking like 50 times in my life, and every single time I get pulled over, I have a protocol. And it's, keys out on the dashboard, windows down, hands on the steering wheel. I do all these things that completely go beyond what I have to do according to, what my legal rights are. But again, I understand the context of what it is that I'm in. I understand I don't look like a guy that's, I don't look like Mr. Rogers. I don't know, depending on where I'm getting stopped, the state of mind of some of these individuals that have pulled me over. And I'm going to play the game, but I'm afforded to be able to play the game because there is a sort of assumption and certainly some backing legally that I have rights that extend beyond what I'm exhibiting at the point. And by having rights, and this is a recurring thing, it's not a matter of having rights. It's they are codified to be protected by the Constitution. Like, I do what the fuck I want. It's just that it's always a balance of consequence, right? So, but some of the things that I can do, and if I were to choose to do, are also, codified as being protected by the Constitution, so as to not be infringed by any sort of governmental authority, and et cetera. So I understand that, there's a game being played, like I've gotten beaten up by cops growing up in the Bronx. I've told the story before of getting into a fight and I beat this kid up so bad. And the kid was a little older than I was. And his mother called the police on me, and she told the cops on the 911 call that I pistol whipped her son. I didn't pistol whip him, he got hit with a bunch of hammers, right? But there was no pistol involved. And, 10 minutes after, after I had this fight, I don't know, half a dozen blocks away, and like 4 or 5 cop cars surround me and my friends, like the whole TJ Hooker fucking, revolvers on the open car doors, freeze, I almost shit myself. And I got put up against a cop car, and the guy's telling me to spread my legs. And I spread my legs, what I thought was an acceptable amount of spreading. And then he proceeded to punch me in my ribs and knocked every iota of air out of my body. And then I proceeded to do a fucking Van Damme split, right? Because suddenly I had the ability to do a Van Damme. So my hands are still on the hood of the car, but like I'm doing a split, and he's searching me, and he goes at some point, "Where's the gun?" And I said, "What gun? Like, what are you talking?" He's like, "Oh, you just, you just pistol whipped the kid, up the block or whatever." And I immediately understood what was going on. And mind you, I'm like 14, 15 at this point. And I said, "I didn't fucking pistol whip that kid. I fucked him up. Like, I said something like, 'Bring me over there. I'll fuck him up again and show you what I did to him.'" So I must have said it, so confidently that they were like, "All right, yeah, this kid probably just beat his ass." And they wound up letting me go. I had a fucking bruised rib for like 2 weeks after that. We didn't go to the precinct. So understand there is a functional balance that this line represents. But again, to the point of what I was talking about before, the job that these auditors do is a job that's dedicated towards keeping that set point where the line's supposed to be at its location, lest it erode. Like basically they're exposing themselves to a bunch of angry, fucking emotional, cops for the prime purpose of holding them accountable by the letter of the law, by being the rule followers almost, right? And maybe that's the disdain that it's easy to have for them. It's like, look at these little whiny rule followers, just ruining people's days and we have to like set that aside for a second. Just understand, like there are plenty of times. Should I tell this story? Yeah, I'll tell this story. So I had should I tell this story? I'm going to tell this story. So I had a law enforcement officer that trained at my academy. And I've had many law enforcement officers. This is the disclaimer part of this story, right? Where I say the overwhelming majority of them are amazing. Well, I had this one officer that signed a contract to train, right? If you're training in a martial arts school, you're probably going to sign some form of an enrollment agreement, which means contract that says you're going to pay for a certain amount of time, whatever. And there's criteria to get out of the contract, cancellation fees, extenuating circumstances, whatever it is. But this officer decided that they were not going to pay and they were not going to be bound by the enrollment agreement because and I'm saying they because I don't want to say it's a he or a she. It was actually a she, but I would just say they. I should just say she, right? Let's just say she. So she did not want to pay anymore, and she showed up at the school and said, I got a thing saying that I'm supposed to pay. And whoever was, working at the front desk at that point, one of the coaches, I'm in my office overhearing this, and well, there's basically a protocol, like just contact this number or this email and then start the process of whatever. Well, no, this is going to be taken care of now. And at some point, she's got she's got an off-duty weapon. She's not brandishing it or anything, but she's like, while showing her off-duty, not brandishing, but allowing it to be seen, which might technically be brandishing, but I'm a cop. And she brings up she's a cop. And she starts getting real, tyrannical. Now, this is just the state of the world, right? So it's like I hear this from the office. So I get on the phone and I call 911 and I say, give them my name and say, I own a school and I have a police officer here who's, having a disagreement with the billing for her membership at the academy. And she's here, stating that she should be getting out of this and we have to listen to her because she's a cop and she's being threatening and it's very intimidating and it's very, and I start creating that narrative and maybe 5 minutes, not even 5 minutes later, you see a car pull up who's one of the supervisors, you could tell. And I don't know if it was a lieutenant, might even been a captain, comes out and looks at, opens the door to the school, looks at her and goes, "Come here." And she goes out. So I'm sitting there with my guys and I'm like, "Don't worry, it'll get sorted." And he walks in again and he goes, "Who's the owner?" I'm like, "That's me, sir." He goes, "So what do you want to do?" I said, "Listen, I'm good if you're good." And I said, "I'm good if she's good." And he's like, "Everything's good." I'm like, "Everything's good." And he was like, "Thanks." And he walked out. I never saw her again. Right? Because here's the thing. Being a cop, you are given a lot of power. And part of having that job is exposing yourself to the type of scrutiny comparable, to that power. There is just a certain point where, you're at work if you're a cop, and the job that you do should have the same standard that you do any job. Now I'm speaking, ideally, it's like, back in reality, and I understand there's going to be, a subset of what that ideal is in application and in regular practice, but the ideal is still there, right? I think looking at the first point that I made in the email, why your values matter more than your view. Those cops in those situations with the auditors, they're getting flustered. They're getting annoyed. They are power tripping at some point. They need to understand what their values are, right? And this is, again, is just the example of this concept of values over views, because we are so fallible, we are so emotional as humans. Like, we will be in bad states, we will be in bad moods, we will, not have enough sleep, or be sick, or have something out of the blue that we weren't mentally prepared for, or something finds a vulnerability in our our confidence or whatever. Like, sometimes we just have bad days, and we have to understand the ebbs and flows of those moods cannot put us in situations where we're making sort of permanent mistakes. Now, when I say this in the context of me, the people, over we, the people, I've said before, and I'll bring it up here, there's a certain minimal level of participation in any government or any civilization or society, whereby if we don't do that minimal amount, everything could go to hell in a handbasket. I mean, I would argue in a different context that it's going there anyway, but the old phrase attributed to Ben Franklin was, somebody asking him after the Constitutional Convention, what do we have? And his response, a republic if we can keep it. And the sentiment of that statement is understanding that, there's enough rope for us to tie a noose around our own necks with the freedoms that we have, the freedoms that are codified in the Constitution. There's always going to be people. We just saw Biden's son get off with basically a misdemeanor charge and a gun charge that's going to be removed. It's like if that happened to you or me, those wouldn't be the consequences, and we know that, we understand that. Yet this is where we are, and a lot of it has to do with this sort of corruption is existing at such a transparent level, in society today, because we're not winning those little battles from citizen to citizen. We're losing those battles in this country. So it's really not a mystery why at the higher levels of the government over society, people are getting away with things at an unprecedented level. Remember, and one could argue, well, there's always been corruption, and absolutely, but I would dare you to find me a time in American civilization where it was so just out in the open, and it was so just contradictory in its application, inconsistent in its application than today. So let's see what's going on over here. Jamie Martin says, you should never wait till you're bound, gagged, drugged, and in a prison cell before you start defending your freedoms, contrary to views of the anti-freedom rally types here in China. I love that. Exercising your rights is like exercising your muscle. Use it or lose it. Right on. I agree completely. Long Island audit is good. Some of the guys can be real cunts, but I guess they're the best. And there's something to that. There's something to have, like, it's like, think about, I'm going to behave myself here as my head is going, don't use that example. I'm going to use it anyway. It's where my brain works. Think about the kind of lawyer you want, right? Like, we all want a certain kind of lawyer. By personality traits, I mean. right? And one of the attributes that we hold in high regard with a lawyer are not attributes that we hold in high regard for a neighbor necessarily, right? Or an ally or a brother. But what do they say? Best man for the job, right? So a lot of these auditors, it's like, yeah, they're in situations where I admit if I was in that situation, from the auditor's standpoint, like I would have been so much more confrontational with the cop. I don't know if I would have had the discipline to stop myself from being more confrontational. Um, let me see your ID. How about you go fuck yourself? Like that might be my first response. Like I'm ruining every video because of it. And also on the other side of from the cops' standpoint, it's like even though I would actively look to respect somebody's rights, I'd still want to call them a cunt. I always said I'd be a terrible cop. I'd get fired immediately. Like there's no way that would work. Best man for the job, right? And I don't want that job. All right. Because Sarah says Leos have the ability to change a person's life with their decisions. Sometimes the decisions are ego-based. Well, it's funny. I was talking to my mastermind group this morning, and a point that I brought up to the guys, because you wind up investing a lot in yourself, and a mistake, and I've mentioned this before, but a mistake that individuals make, these sort of introspective, determined, self-actualizing type individuals, they wind up evolving as individuals, and they wind up developing more insight and exposing themselves to new ideas and allowing those ideas to inform their positions in a more effective level. And then one of the things that a lot of people experience, during this process is the same people that they're dealing with. There is like this subconscious expectation that they're leveling up with you. And so sometimes you're leveling up. You'll deal with an individual in your life that you're used to dealing with, and they're just staying where they are. But it's almost like you feel like they're degrading or they're eroding. And the expectations that you're having are really being informed by this assumption that, that they're doing less, or they're a lower quality individual than they usually were, or they're actually looking to sabotage what you're doing. And it's just not the case. It's just that they're not doing the work you are, right? So I think there's there should be an understanding that a lot of law enforcement today, and again, I'm using the auditing as an example for this bigger point, but I don't mean this to be a cop show that I'm putting on today, not by any means, but a lot of these individuals, and cops, they have the same sort of spectrum of archetypal personalities that society is going to have. Where you have people who are working on themselves, people who take their oath seriously, people who are just at work and just got the best job they could, who are just trying to finish the shift so they can go home and do what they really want to do with their lives, and there's always going to be that spectrum. And I think when you look at the law enforcement, profession, just like my man Caceres was saying, these guys can make decisions that will change a person's life, at a level that not a lot of individuals have in our society, and that, it's the old Uncle Ben statement, with great power comes great responsibility. And that's the way that works, Johnny Groove, what up? Sam Stern, what's up, brother man? Officers are basically graced by a civilian agreement to comply. And, there's a lot to that. I had a debate once with a law enforcement officer who was saying that nobody who lives in cities should be allowed to carry a gun. And it's like, no, like, Second Amendment. And again, it's not that doesn't comply with the Second Amendment. That's not my position. It's a position, and one of many positions if I had to argue against what he was saying. But just fundamentally, it's like, who are you to make that decision? Like, why would you presume to think that just randomly, arbitrarily removing one of the, codified protected rights of the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, why do you think that wouldn't, severely, permanently alter, if not completely destroy, America? Like, how do you, which is the link that it's okay to take out of the chain, so to speak? And this is just a little link. We could take that link out and the chain will be fine. That's the mindset that some people have, and obviously I'm not of that belief at all. So I think that that when you look at individuals who are not doing that work on who they are individually, it's so easy to build that ecosystem that just validates how they want to act. And when you give an individual like that more authority, it's that much easier to create that validating ecosystem, and when it comes to the scaling up of consequence with these little battles that are lost at these person-to-person level of conflicts, we start looking at, well, how are we in this position as Americans? It's like, yeah, we have individuals who don't understand that the little things add up to be the big things. We have people that will, live their life in a way where I'm just going to do what I get away with, right? Like, I'm somebody who I do not follow every law. That's just like everybody else, right? I don't follow every law either. I'm not sitting here saying, I am a staunch supporter and advocate for always following the law. I don't agree with that at all. I agree in being moral, and I also agree and understand and commit to the coexistence of other individuals, otherwise incompatible individuals, based on the Constitution. So I understand. It's like, okay, I'm playing this game too, so I will abide by the functional application of what these rules are, designed to create. Now, all that being said, none of this is going to last forever, right? So I'm going to get to the second point now. The cycle of everything. Everything has an arc. If there is a repetition in an arc, it is eventually butted up in a way that it presents itself as a cycle. But I look at a cycle as a series of arcs. I mean, literally, that's what it is, right? Arcs is a subset of the circumference of a circle. So, again, looking at what it is that we're expecting in terms of outcome, I think we do ourselves a disservice to ignore the fact that every beginning has an end, so to speak. And there is a point where this is not going to be fixable, right? Getting out of the abstract and a little bit more into the specifics of what's going on in America today, we have too many people who grew up disconnected from consequence. There's so much slack in the resources and the surplus of our society that people could basically get away with stuff and society could absorb it. People could make mistakes and society could absorb it, maybe at a family level, a state level, certainly a national level, right? So we have all these people that have grown up a few generations now, completely devoid of any relationship with real consequence. Like, what does it look like when you don't have all of America's, amenities and the things that it provides its citizens, right? So that's one thing. The other thing, we've managed to import incompatible cultures and made concessions to sort of find middle ground with these individual cultures. How do we make people who come from these third world countries more comfortable? Well, the approach of a lot of, the country has been, well, let's meet them halfway. Let's not expect them to be able to participate at the same level of discipline, integrity, like we keep going down a list as an American citizen. Let's give them a little slack. Well, they're not from here. They can't be expected. And these are all concessions, right? It's not our job to make people from other countries more comfortable in our country if they're going to participate in our country, right? No, this is how we do things here. This is how you should do them too. And that's just a fundamental like tribalnomics 101 thing. It's like, well, this is what we do to be us. If you come here and want to be us, this is what we do. It's like you don't show up with a list. Like we give you the list. Like this is what you do now. This is how you participate here. And I think when you look at those, those 2 points, right? The fact that we have people that have grown up a few generations now completely disconnected from consequence, and we have imported, incompatible cultures and made concessions being argued and presented as sort of, middle grounds, with these people. It's, you're not getting it back. You're not getting it back. This is not going to resolve itself. So again, it comes down to, well, if it's not going to work at the highest scale, right? What are the scales that are more relevant to an individual, right? So I look at my, I'll take my grandfather, right? My grandfather was in World War II. He passed a few years ago in his 90s. He had a long life, but when he was born, America was here. When he passed, America was here. And, like his arc is within the arc of America. At some point, whether it's already happened or not, individual Americans are going to be born and their arc is going to go beyond the arc of America as we know it. I think that's inevitable. And thinking like as I do that it's inevitable, I would argue that, there should be some preparation made for that, right? So when I say the cycle of everything, it is, well, what is going to happen after that? What would that look like? And if we, not being able, let's say, to come up with the specifics of what the landscape of society is going to look like, should America ever not necessarily fall, but lose its identity functionally, basically, go against the Constitution, go beyond to whatever the next thing after the Constitution would be. When that happens, what are the attributes that we would want to have in that situation? And I think that's the value of it, right? It's like, well, if, a lot of people are still investing in shit not hitting the fan. I would argue, well, you know what? The things we do to prepare if shit hits the fan, I think are very much compatible with the things we should do if shit did hit the fan already. It's like, it's sort of like be the same person. Be a good neighbor, be responsible, be healthy, be positive, be constructive, understand the big picture and how we act and we participate in this huge agreement with everybody. And I think that that a lot of people right now are distracted again by the little arguments and the little scales of what's going on. And they're not paying attention to what it is that their individual role is going to be and what they could do to sort of make themselves as powerful as possible when those things inevitably happen. So looking at the things. Yard Saxa says there is a difference between following the law and knowing your rights when it comes to dealing with any authority figure. Absolutely. Sam says, why are cops who run martial arts academies typically quirky? Well, it's funny, I'm not a fucking like a jujitsu guy. Like I'm not a member of the jujitsu community, right? That's like a thing, right? Like the jujitsu community, the black community, the gay community, the fucking Dungeons and Dragons community. like there's this idea of community, and they use community to basically describe a demographic attribute. It's like a data point. Like it's not a fucking community. It's just a bunch of people that have this in common. And what is it they do? How can I be in the community with somebody I don't fucking know, somebody I don't participate in life with, right? Like there's some guy doing fucking arm bars in Finland somewhere. Like how the fuck are he and I in the same community? It's bullshit, right? It's nonsense. And I think when we look at a lot of the martial arts schools, whether it's run by a law enforcement or anybody who has the potential for being a tyrant, the last thing that I look to do is have the deficiencies of what's going on there sort of, fall upon me in terms of, oh man, we got to do better than that. I don't know that fucking guy. Like, you joined his school. That's between you motherfuckers. I ain't got nothing to do with that. Like, I got as much to do with some guy in Texas, molesting his martial arts students than I do with the guy on the other side of the Bronx molesting fucking summer campers. There's nothing to fucking do with me. Now, the reason I even say that is because when I look at how I design my life when it comes to the martial arts, I consider myself and live a life of being a martial artist. That means I train in violence. I train in being a warrior, as I defined it in TRIBALNOMICS. It's my job to put myself between the people I care about and harm. In harm's way. That is what I train to do. A lot of people who do jujitsu, not the jujitsu community, but a lot of people who do jujitsu, they do it because they enjoy practicing jujitsu. There's nothing wrong with that. But to me, it's even more reason why we're not the same fucking person. If I were to get into a fight in public, I'm not looking to do jujitsu. I'm not I remember, I don't know, who was it? Ryan Hall. I think it was Ryan Hall, who there was some dude drunk in a restaurant or something, and he was berating people and went to attack somebody, and he took him down and subdued him until law enforcement got there, and everybody, oh, it's so great, so great. Get the fuck out of here. If I'm in a restaurant with my family, let's say, and there's some drunk guy who tries to confront me physically, I'm going to do everything in my power to avoid doing anything with him until it's time to do everything with him. And at that point, I am going to make sure that he never tries to do this to me again. These people who live in this fucking fantasy world, it's all about them. It goes hand in hand in what the whole topic of today's talk is. It's that people look at the world through their lens and through their paradigm, and it's hard for them to look beyond that. And because it's so hard for them to look beyond that, and because at the same time their identities is not overlapped with what the big picture needs its participants to have, right? When everybody's a patriot and everybody, knows about, studying civics in school and understands the Constitution, the story of the American Revolution, and all. When every citizen in America knows that, we don't have to really, watch each other at the level we do when nobody knows it, but it's still on the books, And I think when you look at the guy who is getting drunk and finds himself, threatening families in a restaurant, I don't think it's a good thing for an individual like that to not have a consequence. That's not how I play this game, So I think that when you look at individuals who train martial arts, it's you enjoy practicing, you enjoy training. I don't know if you guys ever saw the movie. I brought this up the other day. I don't know who, but the movie Enter the Dragon. Not Enter the Dragon. Enter the Ninja. I think I made that mistake the other day too. Enter the Ninja. Shokasugi movie. One of my favorite, probably my favorite ninja movie of all time. Guys got to understand, when I was growing up in the Bronx, I thought I was going to be a ninja. When I was 8 years old, I ran away to the Botanical Gardens. I thought I was going to live in the Botanical Gardens and be a ninja. I had ninja shuriken in a bag and stuff, and that you bought from ironically the Chinese candy store down the block. And in this movie, spoiler alert, there is the ninja played by Shokasugi, best ninja in movies ever. And there is he leaves Japan to live in America. And his family was assassinated except for his mother and his son. They were all assassinated by this ninja clan. So he leaves Japan to get away from those ninja clans. It comes to America. and he befriends a police tactics instructor. It's like a kickboxer, regular white guy martial arts dude, like a Chuck Norris type, who's a cop who teaches the cops. And they train together, and they're just like on different levels, right? Shokasugi is like, this dude lives this, and this other guy trains this. And there's the bad ninja towards the end of the movie, who eventually fights Shokasugi to the death. Well, as he's going through, the final, scenes, he comes upon this cop, this defensive tactics instructor. And you could tell the cop guy, the Chuck Norris cop guy, who wasn't played by Chuck Norris, some other guy, he has this look like, okay, this is what it's all about. This is what the training was about. And the other ninja like walks towards him, and it's like such an unceremonious fucking kill. The guy just dies like almost instantly, or gets like done over. Like it takes a while to die, but gets dealt with like immediately, because there's just levels to this shit, right? And I say this not to make myself out to be the ninja, although I still train every day to be one, right? But the idea of it is, these people live in a fucking fantasy land, and they can afford to live in a fantasy land because the success of generations before us in America allowed us enough of a surplus to create a fucking fantasy land. And only our codes, our values, our transcendent alliances are going to keep us from eroding, when we have the complete freedom to do so, if we so choose. And that is the point of what I'm getting at, right? So Caceres says Matt Serra. It wasn't Matt Serra. I know the thing you're talking about with Matt Serra, and it wasn't that time. I'm almost certain it was Ryan Hall in a restaurant. I know about the Matt Serra one you're talking about, and like Matt Serra, like I really like Matt Serra. Matt Serra is a fucking G. But for some reason, the Matt Serra thing was, I think it was in like a Vegas. There's a certain point where you don't do stuff because like the juice ain't worth the squeeze. And I think it was, I'm almost certain it was Ryan Hall that I remember when I saw it. And I know Ryan, like I don't know Ryan very well. I've had Ryan in for a seminar in my school before. Like I'm not saying that this is Ryan Hall's a piece of shit or something. I'm not saying that at all. But what I'm saying is, this is what happens when a sport mindset is given the ability to handle something like that. Like you take a guy down, like I'll tell you right now, I've run a jiu-jitsu school for 20 something years. If a guy has a knife, there's not a jiu-jitsu move that is going to counter that, effectively. You will basically benefit from being able to control the situation prior to the other person getting the knife online, or you will do something instinctively that will neutralize the knife until your jiu-jitsu control can manage the situation. But there isn't a jiu-jitsu, technique or system that's going to neutralize a knife attack, despite what you might see in some of the old school magazines. So the point is, it's like, why would you ever tell one of your students that if somebody's drunk and berating people and looking to get physical, why would you ever tell them to tackle this guy and hold him for the police? Or I don't get that. I just think fundamentally, it's like, it's not even a matter of preference. It's like, well, I'm of this mindset, and I think we should act like this, as opposed to that person think we should act like that. It's literally, what have you done to know that this person does not have a blade? What do you know? Or what have you done to be able to assess if this person was alone? Like, there are all of these things. Like, a lot of people, because it's funny, a lot of people will say, myself included, I got into a lot of fights, much more so before I started training martial arts than after I trained martial arts. And one of the things that I attribute that to is, when you start training in martial arts, you start realizing all of the fucking landmines and booby traps that are out there when dealing with people that we just assumed didn't exist prior to knowing about them. You know, they say ignorance is bliss. There are plenty of situations that in hindsight, I look back and holy shit, I was so lucky somebody didn't just come up and fucking poke me with a knife in the, you know, in the kidneys from behind without me seeing them. Or the person I was punching in the face didn't just, you know, pull a blade out and start fucking poking me, you know, while I was trying to punch his face in. Like, I was very, very fortunate in a lot of the fights that I got into, you know, so there's a responsibility that a lot of people just aren't tracking when that's concerned. You know, I think that's the greater point. All right, guys, I'm going to stop it there. As usual, we went all over the fucking place, but the idea of it, let me give you a final sentiment. Maybe I should start doing this every episode. The only way that you are going to survive, thrive, is if you are running a formula that begins at the smallest scale, which is the individual, and is consistent as it scales up. When enough Americans did that, we had a very functional country. I would say we were on the upward part of the arc. I think we've already passed that. And I think that the individuals in America are never going to have that functional level of overlap that generations in the past did. So all that means is the highest level of scale that we were building from the individual up just needs to be adjusted. But the priority still starts with you, the individual, right? So that being said, masterchim.com, go there. Get on the email list. I think about something every day to talk about. I always leave a quarter of the day, let you guys know what's going on with these videos and such. But I appreciate you guys watching. Hope you guys had a good time. I certainly did. I'll see you guys next week, 12 noon Eastern Standard Time. And as always, brothers and sisters, pressure to power.